live. This is Teal with the Arcane Bear. We've got a wonderful guest for you today, Tone Vays. How you doing?
Hey man, thanks for having me on. It's great here in Colombia. Nice and warm today, so the shades. Had a little Bitcoin art done. Just went off stage doing my presentations about the ICO bubble.
Yeah, very, very classy. I liked your presentation earlier. Very well put together. I appreciate that. Your show is great as well. So for those of you that don't know, check out Tone Vays on YouTube. We'll just give you a quick plug there from the get-go. So one of the big topics that I'm interested in right now is your experience with Bear & Stearns, doing risk analysis, working with JP Morgan. What do you see the future of these, the CME futures actually affecting Bitcoin's price?
I'm one of the few people that doesn't see a huge effect on the Bitcoin price from the CME futures. I guess I have a different perspective on this because I'm also a futures trader for myself, not as much so anymore, time constraints. But because the CME futures, they're not actually delivering the Bitcoin. So because there's no Bitcoin delivery, all it is just two different entities making a bet on the price of Bitcoin that's actually coming from people trading the Bitcoin. So no one is going to be that crazy and try to sell too many contracts. If they do, they're just going to lose money because they're not actually scaring the market that they have that kind of Bitcoin to deliver, or they have that kind of Bitcoin to take possession of, because there's no delivery required.
Right.
So I don't really, I see it more like the Bitcoin CME futures. I see it more like the S&P 500 futures. The S&P 500 futures do not move the S&P 500 index. The S&P 500 index is determined by the movement of 500 different companies. So unless you're going to manipulate every one of those 500 companies, you're not going to manipulate the S&P 500 index. And that's why the futures on the S&P 500 index are always in line with the S&P 500. So I see the same thing here. Unless you're planning to manipulate every single exchange in the underlying index, the futures themselves will be in line with the average price of the underlying index.
Do you think that the futures affect price discovery at all?
They do when there is physical delivery involved. And that's the difference, right? Because the CME futures do not have physical delivery, I don't see them as being a big use case for price discovery. If they wanted to make those futures physical delivery, whether you deliver or not, you got to keep in mind, like gold and oil, CME gold futures, CME oil futures, they're physical delivery futures. Now, almost nobody actually delivers it.
Right.
Like 99% of all these future contracts, they kind of cancel out near expiration. But the mere threat of the delivery makes those futures as the only price discovery of gold. Like the price discovery of gold is the CME futures for the most part. No one goes around to all these little gold dealers like Peter Schiff, you know, for price discovery of gold. Peter Schiff is using the futures price of gold to deliver the gold to people, because that's where all the volume is and the threat of physical delivery, whether it happens or not. Because there's no threat of physical delivery on these futures, I'm expecting it to work the other way around. The price discovery will still be done by those that are actually exchanging the Bitcoin.
Right, so it'll be kept in the underlying asset itself. Do you think at one point they'll try to make the Bitcoin deliverable for the futures?
Maybe. Maybe, and that's what you kind of want to worry about, right? So as long as it's cash settled, it doesn't scare me. Once Wall Street and the CME, once they go to physical delivery, and now you can create, like in gold, you have, I mean, I don't have a problem with it in gold, but once you can create futures for threat of delivery for more Bitcoin than there is Bitcoin, then it becomes very weird price discovery. Kind of like in gold, though I don't subscribe to like the gold manipulation that it's down, right? I think gold gets manipulated up as much as it gets manipulated down, just for profit. But if they do go to physical delivery and the futures become price discovery of Bitcoin, then it may get a little weird.
Right, so the overall effect won't necessarily be noticeable because you're looking more at a speculation additive for the regular stock investor. Do you think the hype around the futures being launched will create more momentum in the price of Bitcoin?
I think it already has. I think it already has. I think the Wall Street saying, buy the rumor, sell the news is absolutely true. So everyone is right now buying Bitcoin on the rumor that Wall Street is going to make it credible. And it's weird because as that's happening, the government is coming out saying that stealth holding of Bitcoin might be illegal in the near future, right? So as the government is coming out trying to criminalize certain uses of Bitcoin, Wall Street is coming out, hey, let's make futures of this stuff, right? So right now, clearly the hype of Bitcoin is doing really, really well. So it's already happening. We'll see if it's a sell then use event when the futures launch in a couple of weeks.
Great. And so I think we were at around almost $12,000 this morning for the price of Bitcoin, which is a beautiful thing, as well as our beautiful day too. So my next question is, do you see Bitcoin's price as a bubble now, or are we just at the early stages of something that's about to take off?
Oh man, it's always difficult to predict a bubble. Now, if Bitcoin is in a price bubble, it's not a big deal because just like the NASDAQ itself, the future of the internet will only go one stronger. The future of the Bitcoin blockchain will only get stronger and be more and more useful. So even if there is a bit of a price bubble in Bitcoin short term, it's only a matter of time before we reach new all-time highs continuously. I'm a big believer in Bitcoin. I see the ICO bubble as the altcoin bubble is very different. I think that's more like a tulip bubble that once it's down, it's down. There will not be another new all-time high.
Right. So you're well known for calling almost everything else other than Bitcoin a scam coin. Are there any of these alternative assets that you see as valuable companies for the products and services that they offer, aside from just the obvious Ponzi's and MLMs that are out there?
It's an interesting question. So, but that's the thing, like a lot of them offer, like some of them offer like dreams that will never be achieved. A small group of them offer the same stuff that is currently being offered, but they're trying to offer in a decentralized way, which I believe makes no sense, and they're getting this insane kind of investment that they don't know what to do with the money. So I don't really have any favorites in the space. I mean, a couple of them are creating these ICOs that aren't very speculative, that are fully backed, and I don't consider everything a scam, but pretty much almost everything.
No, that's fair. There's a lot of the market space itself is almost immature. It's kind of growing up to some degree. Do you see the future of Bitcoin adding other layers of smart contract capabilities to keep the momentum in a singular environment, or do you see them combining together as almost a cable of commerce?
I mean, I do see smart contracts coming to Bitcoin. Let's see what Rootstock can do. I mean, that's what they're working on. And a few other projects. Now, will smart contracts on Bitcoin steal all of this hype and investment that's currently happening with Ethereum? Probably. Probably will. Is it a healthy thing for Bitcoin? I don't know. Like, it's good for those that have Bitcoin, and if all this ICO hype was happening on Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin would be through the roof. But then I probably would have called a real bubble in the price of Bitcoin. A different discussion would be, do we really need decentralized smart contracts? And this is one of the debates that I have with a lot of people, is that I'm still very skeptical that the world needs decentralized smart contracts. Now, we need smart contracts. Those are great. I would love for more things to be automated and executed. Self-driving cars, you know, would be amazing. I can't wait for that. You know, cut down on traffic, more productivity, so I don't have to drive my car. But do we really need decentralized Uber in places where Uber is legal? If you're going to talk to me about France, yeah, they need a decentralized Uber. London, they need a decentralized Uber because they're getting rid of Uber. But if Uber is legal, they can offer that service in a much more efficient way than a decentralized one, because there's nobody to call for help in a decentralized system.
And no, I actually absolutely agree with you. There's some systems that just don't make sense to be decentralized. So for instance, I live in Costa Rica, and the entire registry of all the properties that are held in Costa Rica are held in paper, but they're held online as well. I know it was a wartime tactic to actually try to attack the registries back in the day, because if you could destroy the ownership of property in the country that you were attacking, they took a lot longer to rebuild. Do you see value in the decentralized nature of contracts for particular environments, perhaps like the real estate?
Not really, because again, in today's world today's digital world, I mean, how do you destroy that? I mean, just all that country needs to do is back it up with Google. You can just make a Google spreadsheet. You can upload it as a Google Doc. You can even make it public and make it only editable by, 30 people that have permission to edit the spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet is now a blockchain according to, the definition of blockchain, right? Like, how is an invading country, unless it's a US country, that can go tell Google not to do it, but then anyone can back up the spreadsheet, right? So there you go. So what's the point of decentralizing all that data if you can just outsource it to Google or save it yourself on a dozen servers in 12 different countries? My email works the same way. I mean, a little plug for Proton Mail, I guess, that's what I'm using. It's encrypted email where I am the only password holder. So my email is encrypted, my email is private, and I rely on the company, of course, for that privacy, and I rely on them to make sure my emails are stored on, let's say, a dozen backups all around the world. So even if some government comes to them and says, give us all the email, all they hand over is a bunch of encrypted junk, and if their company is forced to go down, okay, fine, and they can just reestablish it again. They have the backups on the other side of the world. So again, the decentralized email wouldn't make sense as long as you have the right privacy in place.
Right, so privacy is a huge issue. Is there
sorry, and one more on the real estate thing. And it won't matter, like, if an invading country takes over your country, they couldn't care less what the registry is, right? It's irrelevant to them. The government of your country decides if you're an owner of that property or not, right? So if an invading government comes in, they will decide if they own your property or not. And if that government leaves 70 years later, sure, you can try to claim this was your property before the war, but even that's difficult because now someone else has been on that property for X number of years. These are not, like, decentralization and blockchain are not going to solve these problems. These are human problems, not technological.
So I've always thought one of the kind of inherent values of Bitcoin and the blockchain in general is some of the assured transparency. Do you think that the transparency aspect of the contracts itself, because we've seen that not only can you write smart contracts, but you can in fact write dumb contracts under that as well. Do you feel that the transparency is important, I guess, regardless of the blockchain?
Transparency is usually a problem, okay? Like in the case of Bitcoin, it gives you transparency of the transaction, but not the users involved, right? When it comes to contracts, you need it the other way around. When it comes to contracts, you need to know who's involved in a contract, but you want to protect what is in the contract. It's completely reversed. And contracts in general are not being censored. So if your thing is not censored, you don't need decentralization. You just need privacy. So I love the fact that Bitcoin Ledger is public, because my ultimate use case for the Bitcoin blockchain is to force government tax revenue to run through a public ledger, so any first-year computer science guy or even a high school computer science guy can edit the tax spending and collection of the government to make sure that the government is being honest and they're public servants, and we should see exactly how they're getting their money and how they're spending their money. Private citizens, it needs to be the other way around. Private citizens, their spending and their money should be totally private. I hate money laundering laws. I think they should not exist. I hate KYC laws. I think they should not exist. Now, when it comes to these ICOs, if you're soliciting money from strangers, if you're responsible for other people's money, then absolutely your company needs to be scrutinized and watched to make sure that if you are responsible for other people's money, then you need a lot of regulation and scrutiny. But not your clients, not your customers. Your customers should be allowed to invest freely, but you should be watched on taking their money. And again, going back to smart contracts, no one is censoring your smart contract, and the data inside that smart contract needs to be private. But the people involved in that contract probably want to be public, because a lot of the contracts end up going to arbitration, and someone needs to resolve this contract in between you two. So there needs to be very clear on who is on the other end if the contract didn't go right.
Great. Brilliant. Tone, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I loved your answers there. Remember, guys, to like, subscribe, do all those fun things. Make sure you check out Tone Vays, Liberty Life Trail, I believe.
Yes, libertylifetrail.com, Tone Vays on Twitter, and check out my YouTube channel. Also, just Google Tone Vays on YouTube.
Perfect. This is Tio the Arcane Bear from beautiful Bogota in Colombia. Thank you, Tone.
Thank you.
Ciao.